The rumble of icy water splashing against the wooden sides of a washing tub in a northern settlement could impress a traveler more than the clang of weapons. How to explain that Vikings, whose glory is based on battles and stormy raids, considered cleanliness not a luxury, but almost a ritual? Why did Saturday specifically become the day when the cold waters of the fjord transformed into a means of power and respect, while most of medieval Europe at the same time hid behind layers of dirt? And most importantly, what part of the truth about themselves did they conceal, the one that is capable of changing your perception of this era by the end of the story? According to the observations of the Anglo-Saxon chronicler Adam of Bremen, the Northerners regularly cared for their bodies, which surprised his contemporaries. Archaeological excavations in Birka and York confirmed these records. Found combs, tweezers, and even small knives for ear cleaning demonstrate a common standard of self-care. But behind them stood not only cleanliness, but something much more serious that will remain a mystery for a long time to come. Before explaining the key idea, it is necessary to reinforce the image. Let's mentally transport ourselves to a long wooden bench near the Jarl's house. Men and women clean their hair of smoke and salt residue, like archers checking their equipment before a modern training session. This was the role played by the bench ritual, as one might call the regular Saturday wash, which the Scandinavians themselves associated with preparation for a new weekly cycle. Historians dispute the frequency, but agree on one thing: Vikings had a consistent tradition of bathing more often than most neighboring peoples. Here appears a term that best reveals the logic of their behavior. When the Northerners used small metal tools for facial care, they employed what modern archaeologists call a scramasax, a long single-edged knife serving both in daily life and in combat. First was the image, a versatile blade with which a warrior could equally confidently trim wood shavings, groom his beard, or cut a rope. And only then does the term appear. It is this multifunctional knife that confirms the Vikings' habit of turning body care into a part of daily preparation, just as today an athlete checks their equipment, knowing that the result depends on the smallest detail. Such an approach creates a vivid scene. Steam from heated stones mixes with the scent of pine oil, water runs down the skin, and a hand habitually checks the sharpness of the blade, as if both body and weapon must be equally ready for the coming week. And at this moment, the Vikings differed from their European neighbors more strongly than it seemed at first glance. But behind this regular cleanliness lay a practical reason, which explains the Saturday ritual even better and brings us to the point where personal hygiene transformed into a tool of influence among the peoples they encountered. The cold air of the northern morning filled with the sharp scent of smoking herbs as a Viking bent over a wooden tub, preparing for what was much more than a wash for him. Why did preparation specifically occupy such an important place in his life that the Saturday ritual was perceived almost like military training? And most importantly, what in the behavior of these people struck foreign observers so much that they left records with a tinge of envy and anxiety? The answer has not yet been fully revealed, but it already lays the groundwork for that unexpected twist we will approach closer to the end. The Frankish diplomat Ibn Fadlan, who observed Scandinavians in the early 10th century, wrote about how meticulously they cared for their faces and hair, although his description was colored by cultural prejudices. However, archaeological finds from Hedeby confirm stone vessels with residues of soap mixtures based on animal fat and wood ash have indeed been found in the homes of the Northerners. This information strengthens the idea that regular preparation for the Saturday ablution was a real, not a literary image. Before the term appears, an image is needed that conveys the meaning of the era. Imagine a wooden shed where smooth plates, heated over a fire, lie on a table. They are needed to smooth out the wrinkles of woolen clothes after washing. And it is precisely this smooth, hot plate that is the very tool that modern historians call a pressing stone. Only after the image, The term a pressing stone was a smoothed slab heated in fire and used for flattening fabric, like a modern iron. One simple word, but it tells of a world in which clothing was not merely protection from the cold, but an indicator of status. Now the scene becomes brighter. Steam rises from the hot water, mixing with the scent of a birch whisk with which a man beats dirt from his tunic. It is still dark outside, but light smoke already emerges from the bathhouse doors, and it seems as if night itself retreats under the pressure of the growing warmth. For the Northerners, preparation for Saturday was like tuning a musical instrument. The cleaner the body, the more precisely the coming day would sound. Scandinavian settlements were characterized by practicality. In regions with cold climates, people often heated stones and then added them to wooden tubs, a method of quickly warming water, known to archaeologists from charring marks on discovered boulders. And this detail explains why Saturday was so important. Preparation required labor, fuel, time. But it was precisely this concentration of effort that created the feeling of a new cycle beginning, as if the water washed away not only dirt, but also the fatigue of the past week. Here another feature is important to note. Before bathing, the Northerners meticulously combed their hair with combs made of bone or horn, dozens of which have been preserved in Birka and Gotland. It was precisely this process that created a peculiar preparatory silence before the ritual, when only the scraping of the comb's teeth through tangled strands could be heard. And this comb, meticulously carved and adorned with simple patterns, became a sign of prosperity, just as a watch or phone emphasizes the owner's status today. The transition becomes almost imperceptible. The closer we get to the beginning of the ritual itself, the clearer it becomes that Viking hygiene was not a whim, but a part of their social structure. But the most important processes began precisely at the moment when the Saturday ablution ceased to be preparation and transformed into an action capable of changing how others perceived the Northerners upon meeting. When Saturday dawn arrived, the settlement's silence gradually dissolved into the sound of pouring water. Why did this specific moment evoke such surprise in European observers that they recorded it as something almost incredible? What made a simple act, ablution, an event that changed attitudes toward Vikings in negotiations, in trade, and even in marital alliances? The answer is still ahead, but now we are approaching the very heart of the Saturday ritual for the first time. Anglo-Saxon written sources note that the Northerners bathed regularly, and Saturday, lager dager, the day of washing, is directly mentioned in Old Norse texts. Historians believe that it referred to a ritualized action connected with the weekly cycle. Archaeological finds from Hedeby and Reba show traces of small wooden structures with stone hearths, which could have been used as prototypes of bathhouses. All this allows us to assert ablution was not an isolated event, but a part of regular daily life. Before the term appears, an image needs to be created that conveys the atmosphere of that morning. The soft light of dawn falls on a tub of water, over which white steam rises. Men lower red-hot stones into it with tongs, and the water hisses, bursting into steam, as if the earth itself breathes out warmth. Precisely such a scene helps one understand that a special vessel is used, which modern researchers call a stone boiler. And only now, the term a stone boiler was a heavy boulder with a depression, in which water was heated by prolonged heating of stones, similar to how metal kettles are used today. This vessel plays a key role in visualizing the Saturday ablution. A young warrior carefully pours water into a wooden tub, and light ripples form on the surface, as if a nascent wind touches a lake. Women prepare coniferous infusions, throwing juniper or birch branches into the hot water, known from ethnographic data as accessible aromatic additives. All this makes the scene not merely domestic, but almost sacred. It was at such moments that observers from the Frankish state or England saw what seemed strange to them. Vikings, whom they considered crude savages, washed dirt from themselves more often than many inhabitants of European cities. For a person of that time, this seemed almost a challenge, especially considering that water in a cold climate was a resource requiring effort. It had to be heated, transported, kept warm. Now, another important element. When a northerner finished bathing, he thoroughly rinsed his hair, sometimes using a soapy solution based on wood ash. At this moment, he took into his hands a long wooden spoon with a perforated end, similar to a modern slotted ladle. First, the image, a round wooden scoop, like a fishing net, catching bark fragments or herbs from the water. And then the term. Modern archaeologists call this instrument a perforated spoon for bathing procedures. It served for stirring hot water and scooping out sediment. The scene becomes even more vivid. Steam envelops the figure. The face reddens from the heat. Thin trickles of water run down the skin, like lines on an ancient carved stone. At this moment, a person feels renewed, not only in body, but also in spirit. And it is precisely this that creates a smooth transition to what happened immediately after, to the moment when cleanliness transformed into a social and even political instrument. When the heat of the Saturday ablution subsided, the most unexpected part of the northern custom began, the one that struck contemporaries more strongly than the washing process itself. Why did a clean face and carefully styled hair transform into a weapon that worked no worse than a sword? Why did Scandinavians, upon leaving the bathhouse, seem to change their social mask, becoming more dangerous and more attractive to those around them? There are still too many answers, but it is here that the ritual first interacts with the outside world. Anglo-Saxon monks recorded that Vikings stood out among foreigners for their neatness, especially in trade centers like York. Frankish sources complained that women fell under the influence of the northerners due to their well-groomed appearance. Even Adam of Bremen emphasizes this, albeit with clear indignation. Archaeology confirms the chronicler's words. Numerous combs, glass beads, bronze beard rings, and even traces of aromatic oils on pottery have been found in the excavations of Jorvik. All this shows how important the impression made after the Saturday ablution was. But before the term appears, a strong image is needed. A man emerges from a wooden bathhouse into the cold air. His hair, washed with hot water, shines as if a sunbeam has just passed over it. His beard is smoothed, and the juniper branch with which he wiped his face leaves a light scent of smoke. It is this image that leads to one item that modern researchers call a beard ring. And only now, the term a beard ring was a small metal ring that Scandinavians sometimes used to tie off the tip of their beard, creating a neat shape reminiscent of a modern, stylish haircut. Now the scene comes alive. The clean metal of the ring gleams in the morning light, transforming the stern northerner into a figure who, in a trading city, could instantly stand out among strangers. For Europeans of that time, this caused a sense of dissonance. A warrior capable of burning a village, at the same time looked well-groomed, like a city artisan preparing for a fair. And here another aspect is important: smell. According to Ibn Fadlan's reports, Scandinavians did not use aromatic substances systematically, but the finds themselves suggest that they did exist. Traces of fats and resins have been found on the walls of ceramic vessels, which could have included aromatic additives. In the context of medieval Europe, where most people smelled of smoke, dirt, and unwashed fabrics, the northerner's Saturday scent became an unexpected symbol of strength. He smelled of cleanliness in a world where cleanliness was a rarity. Now a new image appears, a market square in York. In a crowd of people smelling of beer, smoke, and animal hides, stands a person from whom emanates the warm scent of birch water. His hair is combed, his beard is well-groomed, his skin is rosy. And this is not just aesthetics, it's strategy. Travelers from continental Europe wrote that women were more willing to converse with northerners. This meant one thing: cleanliness became a part of their social influence. Here comes the moment when ablution begins to function as a tool for status enhancement. A northerner preparing for negotiations knew cleanliness emphasizes prosperity, unlike the emaciated appearance of neighboring peoples who washed much less frequently. Thus, the Saturday ritual transformed from a domestic habit into a form of demonstrative superiority, as if a modern athlete enters the arena not only physically prepared, but also polished to a shine, understanding that appearance sometimes determines the first seconds of contact. It is at this moment that Saturday cleanliness begins to speak louder than words. But the significance of this ritual is revealed even deeper when we see how it worked in culminating situations, in negotiations with enemies, in preparation for campaigns, in moments when fate required not only the strength of the sword, but also the power of impression. When the moment of decisive meetings arrived, diplomatic negotiations, trade deals, or even preparation for a campaign, the Saturday ablution transformed from a domestic habit into a tool of psychological pressure. Why did cleanliness, at first glance such a peaceful and gentle trait, become a part of combat training? Why did enemies sometimes see a threat in a well-groomed northerner, and allies reliability? Here, the ritual reaches its culmination, and it is now that what Europeans wrote about with wary envy is revealed. Frankish chronicles mentioned that northerners appeared at negotiations as meticulously combed as if for a holiday, which astonished the local nobility. In the Ribe and Hedeby areas, archaeologists have found dozens of grooming kits collected together. A comb, tweezers, a knife for cleaning nails. They were found in male burials, confirming that hygiene was part of social status, not an adornment for excessively vain people. Such items were found next to weapons, and this combination in itself speaks volumes. But before the key term appears, an image is needed. The flames of a bonfire illuminate a longhouse. Warriors prepare for a raid. One checks shield straps, another greases an axe, another mends a tear in a tunic. By the door sits a man, carefully running a metal plate through his hair, straightening it. This plate, resembling a thin, shining sheet in the hands of a northerner, represents a unique ancient analog of a modern hair straightener. And only after the image can the term be named. Such a plate is a hair-straightening plank, a tool found by archaeologists in several Scandinavian settlements, used for smoothing and straightening strands. Now the scene becomes akin to preparing for an appearance before a judge or an enemy. Straightened hair emphasizes seriousness, like a modern diplomat smoothing his jacket before a meeting. The northerner understood. The first seconds could decide much. Clean skin, the scent of coniferous infusion, and ironed clothes created an impression of strength, discipline, and prosperity. For a medieval person living in a world where dirt was the norm, such an appearance seemed almost unnatural. Both men and women of the Scandinavian world used appearance as part of their social language. Written sources note that Vikings often wore bright fabrics, red, blue, green, dyed with natural pigments. After the Saturday ablution, they put on clean clothes, and the colors looked brighter against fresh skin. This created an effect that European chroniclers called seductive. But behind this lay a quite pragmatic reason. A clean, bright person was perceived as wealthy and successful, which facilitated negotiations and strengthened authority. Now, it is important to mention another element of the ritual that is rarely discussed. After washing, northerners might use wood resin as a styling agent. First, the image. A thick amber drop, gleaming in the sun, resembles a drop of honey but smells of the forest. It is warmed with fingers, run through strands, and the hair lies more evenly. And only then, the term used by modern archaeology, resinous fixative. This simple substance played a role similar to modern hair gel, and here's what happened next. A Viking entering the Jarl's house or the residence of a foreign king created an effect that sources describe almost identically. attention subsided. Not out of fear, but because of the unexpected combination of strength and neatness. A clean person in a dirty world disrupted the usual order, and this gave him an advantage. This scene can be imagined. Tense silence in a room smelling of smoked meat and smoke. The doorway creaks, and a northerner enters, hair straightened, beard styled with a ring, clothes ironed, the scent of pine barely noticeable. In the eyes of those around him appears that special attention that cannot be bought with gold. This is the effect of surprise, the effect of superiority, born from the Saturday ritual. But the true culmination lies not only in the social power of appearance. The most important aspect manifested itself in moments when cleanliness became a symbol of readiness for a major event, for a campaign, for a sea voyage, for a decisive battle. And it is this that leads us to the further part of the story, where the Saturday ritual transforms into a part of the Northerners' fateful decisions. When the Saturday ritual concluded and the water in the tubs cooled, the last, almost invisible, yet most powerful phase of Viking cleanliness's influence began, the one that determined their place in history. Why did the ability to be well-groomed in the harsh northern environment become a powerful symbol that endured for centuries? Why did Europeans who encountered them sometimes despise them, sometimes admire them? And why do archaeologists centuries later find traces of hygiene with the same frequency as weapons? It is precisely here that the story ends, and the meaning of the open loop, laid out at the very beginning, is revealed. Historians note that the Saturday ablution was not only a domestic norm, but also part of pre-Christian notions of order. The sagas contain the idea that bodily cleanliness enhances inner resilience. Archaeologists, having investigated burials in Gotland, note, along with weapons and ornaments, grooming items were often found: combs, tweezers, trimming knives. This means that hygiene was perceived as an element of identity, worthy of accompanying a person into the afterlife. Frankish and Anglo-Saxon scribes, though biased, acknowledged that the Northerners' cleanliness made them dangerously attractive in the eyes of other peoples. But before the term appears, an image is important that shows what these finds looked like in reality. In the darkness of a burial chamber, an archaeologist lifts a small bone object, thin, decorated with simple lines. It resembles a modern nail file, but with signs of wear that speak of regular use. Thus, an image is born, and only after it, the term. Modern historians call this item a personal trimmer. This is a small tool used to trim nails or facial hair, similar to how small scissors or a nail file are used today. Now let's imagine such a trimmer lying next to a sword. This contrast of cleanliness and weaponry speaks of a world where a warrior's body had to be not just strong, but also well-groomed. The Vikings understood appearance is part of the first strike, the first glance that can change perception even before a word is spoken or a blade is raised. In the conditions of medieval Europe, where many suffered from skin diseases, parasites, and the consequences of a lack of regular washing, a northerner smelling of coniferous water appeared alien, almost supernatural. And here is the culminating moment of fate. Before embarking on a sea voyage, warriors might participate in a collective washing. This is mentioned in some interpretations of domestic scenes found on carved stones of Gotland. Historians differ on how mandatory this was, but archaeological data show before sea crossings, Vikings put their clothes and bodies in order. Perhaps this was done for health, perhaps for ritual renewal, but the result was powerful psychological preparation when the body felt cleansed and the mind collected. Now an important image. Early morning by a longship. Waves crash against the hull. The air is sharp and smells of salt. A warrior, having recently undergone the Saturday ritual, steps onto the cold sand confidently, as if the freshness of his body makes him stronger. In his hands, a bag with belongings, containing everything necessary: a comb, a trimmer, a piece of resin. Like an athlete checking his equipment before a competition, he checks his grooming items, knowing that a long journey lies ahead, and these small things will help maintain dignity and composure. When the ship departs from the shore, it becomes clear that the Saturday ablution is not just an act of cleanliness. It is a ritual of preparation for life, for labor, for war, for negotiations, for the sea element. It is a way to keep body and spirit in order when chaos surrounds. And if the inhabitants of Europe at that time often allowed dirt to become the norm, the Northerners turned cleanliness into a habit that helped them feel masters of their own destiny. And now we can return to the question that was posed at the very beginning. Why did Vikings wash every Saturday while most of Europe was mired in dirt? The answer becomes obvious. Cleanliness was their discipline, their symbol of status, their weapon of impression. It was a way to show the world that they were not wild monsters, but people who knew how to take care of themselves, strong, confident, demanding of their own bodies. And it is here that the final challenge to you is born. If a northerner, in a harsh climate, amidst cold and constant threats, could find the strength to cleanse his body every week and prepare himself for a new cycle, then what prevents you today from cleansing your own life, your thoughts, habits, fears? Will you be able to last at least 1 week with the same discipline with which people lived, for whom cold water was the beginning of strength?